Okay, it's non-stamp collector in a serious mood because it's time to knock something on the head. As theists run out of comebacks in these debates, rather than coming up with evidence to support their claims, they tend to try other tactics to stay in the game, for reasons that are, ironically, self-evident. It's nothing new, but I've been seeing a lot of this lately. The old idea that if we atheists don't believe in the biblical God Yahweh, then why on earth are we speaking out against him? As though our very arguing is clear and unambiguous proof that in actual fact we do believe in him, and are just trying to deny it and all of that. So I'm going to address this issue, and I guess, seeing that it is going to fall on deaf theistic ears once again, I really don't know why I'm bothering, because even when their ideas are held up to them and they see for themselves the transparent rubbish that these arguments are, that they themselves would never accept from an apologist for another religion, they tend to hold on to them and keep repeating them anyway. So, not knowing why I'm bothering, here goes nothing. I saw a recent video about this exact topic, in which the guy making the video compared atheism to a disbelief in the 1980s cartoon character Voltron. The gist of the video was along the lines of, well, you don't believe in Voltron either, but you're not out there making videos and writing books about denial of Voltron, are you? So, since you are out there making videos against the God Yahweh, then you must actually and secretly believe in him. This argument takes many forms. We don't argue against Santa Claus, we don't argue against Zeus, etc., etc. And yes, it's very, very easy to not care about imaginary things. But then we atheists point out a few things to these theists making these arguments. Of course they're ignored, but here's the form that they take. That's right, we don't really argue against a belief in Voltron, and indeed no, we don't believe in him. But you know what else? Voltron believers, if there are any, don't do certain things that theists do, based on what they believe in. For instance, Voltron believers don't attempt to change the laws of the countries they live in order to give their beliefs and ideals any special power or privilege. They don't deny science and attempt to alter education curricula to the detriment of actual knowledge. They don't suppress women or homosexuals and justify it with obscure references to old Voltron episode scripts. Some sections of the Voltron community don't attempt to preserve the AIDS virus by actively preaching against condom use, causing the unnecessary deaths of millions each year. They don't have massive fundraising capabilities with which to lobby governments. They don't threaten children with hellfire, petrifying their minds. Okay, I could go on and on and on. Okay, theists, ask yourself these questions. If the Voltron-believing community were doing any of these things to such an extent that it was having a real impact on the way you wanted to live your life, if their lobbying efforts were beginning to impact the decisions of your local, state and federal governments, if Voltron believers began to get political sway and the tide was beginning to turn so that only fellow Voltron believers were going to be capable of being elected to public office, thereby ensuring that the Voltron community's demands were practically always going to be met, if public funds began to be channeled into ridiculous projects such as the construction of 5 massive lions that could be joined together to form an all-powerful fighting machine with a massive silver sword, if the Voltron lobby were attempting constantly to have the Voltron emblem erected in all public buildings, and to have school children recite lines from the cartoon every single morning in public schools. Ready, theists? Here's a direct question for you guys. Would you not oppose that? Theists? Would you not be outraged? Would you not be on here on YouTube speaking out against that? Are you seriously going to suggest that you would just sit idly by because you don't believe in Voltron? Hey, you might have to define yourselves as non-Voltronists, or a-Voltronists, and then you'd get Voltron believers calling you a religion. How'd you like that? Now I'm going to grant you the assumption that you are at least rational enough to oppose such an affront to common sense as an imagined Voltron believers lobby, okay? I'm going to assume that the Christian theists and atheists might even join together to oppose such a lobby. But just to leave you guys on your own for a minute, for the purpose of an example, how might you do it, theists? How might you oppose such a force? Perhaps you might say something like, hey, come on guys, Voltron is only a man-made 1980s cartoon show, it's not real, so why should we have that as the cornerstone of our society? At which the Voltron believers would shout back at you, ha ha ha, you really believe in Voltron, or else you wouldn't be speaking out against him. You might demand to see evidence that Voltron really is real, the better to justify an adherence to Voltronian doctrines. To which the Voltroners' response might be, ha ha, see, you really do believe in Voltron, why else would you be speaking out against something imaginary? Theists, do you see how pathetic these arguments are? These arguments that you use against us outspoken atheists all the time? Like all of your arguments, you would never accept them yourselves, yet you constantly and repeatedly use them against us. The truth is that we speak out against a belief in Yahweh because we sincerely believe that it has a detrimental effect on society and on its adherents. Belief in Yahweh and other imaginary deities has a terrible track record, doesn't it? Now, we are sensible enough, I think, to grant people the right to believe whatever they want. If you want to believe in the Palestinian desert god of the Iron Age, then you're welcome to it. If someone wanted to believe that Voltron was real, they're welcome to that too. But you're not welcome to wave your beliefs around and demand special respect for them, nor to try to deny people's equal rights based on your beliefs, nor to get special tax breaks, nor to get special access to school children's education curricula, nor to use your beliefs to justify any acts of cruelty, prejudice, bigotry, terrorism, or war. Whoa, I said it. Terrorism and war. People, listen. It is the extreme of this debate, but I'm not going to shy away from it. When the tradition of unquestioning adherence to unjustified religious claims held sway in the world, that is, all the way up to the last few centuries, when it knew it could get away with whatever it wanted, think of what it did. Think of the millions and millions who died in religiously inspired wars. Think of what happened to those people who declined to profess a faith in its doctrines. Think of who made the rules in society. Think of why a separation of church and state is considered such a blessing, right? Religion, when it knew it could, justified incredible acts of cruelty. When we think of terrorism nowadays, we're thinking of a certain non-Christian religion, aren't we? Whether or not this association is justified is not the issue at hand, but I do have a point. The problem with Islamic terrorism is that it is based on a set of ridiculous, ungrounded religious beliefs that are shielded from criticism precisely because they are religious beliefs. Christians, on what basis do you oppose the justifications of Islamic terrorism? Because their unjustified beliefs are false, whereas your unjustified beliefs are true? Give us a break. Get real. That is precisely the kind of thinking that inspires and prolongs wars. There are wars going on in modern times because of that kind of idea. We on the atheistic side of this don't have to skirt around avoiding hypocrisy like that in our opposition to religious terrorism. We argue against religiously inspired cruelty by recourse to an appeal to evidence. Exactly the same thing that you would appeal to if you found yourself confronted by a lobby of Voltron believers demanding respect for their beliefs so that they could, without impunity, restrict people's freedoms, prolong prejudices, change your way of life, get public funds for their insane programs, and try to alter the world to fit their view of how it ought to be, despite the wishes of everyone else, and despite the evidence suggesting that a different course of action would lead to greater good for everybody. So, theists, I invite you to be the first in the comment section below to declare publicly that if a community of people who believed in 1980s cartoon characters were altering public policy and impacting on your freedom and lifestyle, that you would not speak out against them, in case doing so would make you look as though you, too, secretly believed in 1980s cartoon characters. Come on and tell us that you would not speak up against such an affront to human dignity. Come on, for once, actually address the issue in the video, in the comment section. You never do that on my videos. If you go changing the topic again in the comment section, seriously, I'll take that as meaning that you once again have no retort, and I will have no option other than to come to the conclusion that I am, and I'm sorry to be so blunt here, entirely right. Which will not surprise me. And again, I'm sorry to say here so bluntly, when arguing with people who believe in talking snakes and the undeniable veracity of scribblings of stupefied desert-wandering peasants. Or look, if you don't want to admit that I'm right, at least stop making this ridiculous claim about me and my fellow atheists, agnostics and skeptics. We don't believe in Yahweh, or Zeus, or Voltron, or He-Man, or Skeletor, and we will stand up to those that do, if and when they try to impose their worldview upon us and our lives and our societies. If you want to believe it, keep it to yourself. Or, if you do choose to take it into the public arena, which is obviously your right also, just don't make this ridiculous claim against those of us who oppose you, saying that our opposition to you indicates some kind of complicity in your unjustified superstition. It doesn't. Just like your reasonable speaking out against the Voltron lobby wouldn't suggest anything about you believing in cartoon characters. Thank you.